of those rays of light, which are actually pathways that consist of photons, they scatter. And because the curvature of the lens, different parts of the lens induce different angles in the pathways. And then when it all works perfectly, every single one of those pathways converges at the exact same point on the neural retina. And so you see clearly. Now, as you look at this and you think about this, remember, we're not even considering the fact that there's actually a choroid and the light has to bounce off of the choroid to strike the retina. We're not even, I couldn't draw something that complex. But so induce here mentally the fact that all of those we'll try to just do a couple of them. All of those paths of light have to bounce off the mirror before they hit the neural retina. Okay, so this is how a lens works, whether it be a microscope, a telescope, a camera, a slide projector. Everything's got to converge at a point. Now, this dot that we're looking at, let's say is the dot at the top of the letter I. And from that dot, we get a million different pathways. Now, instead of looking at a dot, you're looking at a dog. And light has to bounce off of his tail, his toenail, his lower jaw. How many pathways of light do you have now? A million trillion. I don't know. It boggles the mind. It's like trying to imagine all of the action potentials that have to occur in the right order so that hundreds of muscles contract in the right order with the exact amount of strength when a figure skater does a triple axel. We just boggles our mind. So we're looking at a dot there, and supposedly the dot is clear. Well, let's say that this happens. Did we get convergence? Yes? But the convergence is anterior to the retina. So when the light strikes the retina, we don't have convergence. This is what's going on when you're nearsighted. Again, I want you to think about a curved piece of glass. And different parts of the curved piece of glass will introduce different angles. Is this not wild? Think our eyeball can do all this? And our brain can control it? We don't think about it. Wait, don't talk to me. I'm trying to focus, darn it. Different parts of the curved piece of glass will introduce different angles. Oh my God, what if it doesn't work? So we go to the doctor and we get a lens, and we put that lens in front of our eye. Maybe you call them glasses, maybe you call them contact lenses, and that lens introduces angles so that when we combine the angles introduced by the glasses or the contact lenses with the angles that the lens itself introduces, we get point focus, we get convergence. The listing of all the reasons, because there's at least 22, that might cause somebody to be nearsighted. And no, I'm not going to give you 22, and you don't have to memorize them. My point is, how many things does the light pass through? It passes through the cornea, doesn't it? So what if the shape of the cornea is wrong? What if the thickness of the cornea is wrong? What's it pass through after it passes through the cornea? Aqueous humor. What if the electrolyte balance of the aqueous humor is wrong? Do you think there's a difference between the way light passes through fresh water versus salt water? How about 3% salt water versus 5% salt water? So the cornea, what if its shape is wrong, it's too thick? What if the electrolyte concentration of the aqueous humor is wrong? What if the lens can't change shape properly to focus the light? You see, there's literally at least 22 reasons one might be nearsighted. And what, of course, then is the opposite of this? So now we're looking at a period paths of light scatter. And when they reach the neuroretina, they haven't converged. If we extrapolate, they would converge in theory, behind the skull or whatever. So this individual is farsighted. These are both simple to fix. They're not for me or you, but for the eye doctor. Imagine if you had that mess going on. That's astigmatism.
Oh, I had that.
We can't even imagine. How on earth are you going to fix that? Especially with contact lenses versus glasses. I mean, you tell me, do your contact lenses have a top and bottom? They can.
Progressive.
They can. Progressive is something else. Progressive are the lenses where they're actually divided into different zones. In other words, bifocals is where we started with this. And with bifocals, you look through the top to see distance, you look through the bottom to see up close. Benjamin Franklin invented the first pair of bifocals by taking a pair of glasses designed to see distance and a pair designed to see up close, cutting each one in half and gluing the two pieces together. And so for years, bifocals had the line. The next was the trifocal, which had the line. Next, we had bifocals and trifocals, but without the line. Now we can literally divide the lens up into, say, 1,000 regions from top to bottom. And the higher you look through the lens, the more distance it's for. The lower you look through the lens, the more up close it's for, and everything in between. Instead of, what do I have here? 8, 9, 10 zones. Imagine 100 zones, 1,000 zones. That's the truly progressive lens. And actually the sides then are
Blurred out.
just for normal, and that's what gives some people, they feel like they're in a fishbowl. Anyway, so yeah, that's astigmatism. Okay, and finally, because we've been looking at adopt, and it's this complicated. And before the finally, I want to remind you that because the photoreceptors are on the back side of the retina, and the light has to come in and bounce off the choroid and hit the retina. Left and right are all screwed up. And let's now look at an object with dimensions. So the light, when you look at me, the light that bounces off of my head ends up on the inferior aspect of your retina. The light that bounces off my feet ends up on the top of your retina. And the light that bounces off my middle ends up in the middle. And so the image of me projected to you, I'm upside down. So this whole choroid mirror thing, and I think another way you might relate to the choroid, imagine you're in the bathroom, and you've got a large mirror here, and you're holding a mirror in front of you, and you're trying to groom the back of your head. Everything's backwards. Well, that's what the choroid does. But now we see that I'm actually going to reach up to get this, because that's down. Wow. We already know that gravity doesn't pull us down, it pushes us down. Maybe it pushes us up. Maybe I'm not here. Some psychologists, I was trying to remember sociologists or psychologists, I think they were psychologists, created some goggles that would invert everything. And they took a group of people out to a closed mall, parking lot, or old airport, huge open space, and put these goggles on the people and had them drive around. Of course, crashing cars, I guess. But anyway, within a matter of minutes, they adjusted and were able to operate the automobiles just fine. Then when they took the goggles off, everything was, whoa. But again, just a few minutes, and they adjusted and were able to operate automobiles perfectly. It shows the power of our brains. Yeah.
So that's just what the choroid does.
What the choroid, the left-right is the choroid over here. The up-down is because of simply the direction of travel of the individual paths of light. Okay, so crazy stuff. Well, I guess that took an hour. I said it'd take 30 minutes. Oh, well. Every time I touch that, I get electrocuted.
Get my whole folder.
Yeah, walking on carpet. Where's the attendance? Does anyone? No, you don't have to. You need it?
I do. Yes.
All right, so back to where we were. So we talked about the ventricles, the meninges, the cerebrospinal fluid. And the last thing we did was trace the cerebrospinal fluid. And I said we talked about a lumbar puncture and anesthesia. So with a lumbar puncture, the objective is to withdraw cerebrospinal fluid, see if there are microorganisms in it. So you know a little something now about the meninges. You've no doubt heard of meningitis. You can have a bacterial infection within the meninges and within the cerebrospinal fluid. In a lumbar puncture, they literally have to stick the needle into the subarachnoid space and withdraw cerebrospinal fluid. The needle goes in around L4, or you might read between L4 and L5. If you've seen this in a friend, relative, or even a television show, the patient was on their side with their knees curled up to their chest, and that gets, you can imagine, picture the vertebral column. If you bend over that way, you increase the space a little bit between the vertebrae. So you would withdraw the cerebrospinal fluid and plate it out like you do on a petri dish in a microbiology class, put it in the incubator, and see what
I'm
grows.
sure you've heard it 1,000 times, but what about an epidural? Does that go into the
We'll
subarachnoid
get there.
space too?
No.
Oh,
We'll get there. All right, the other topic, next page, Roman numeral 10, anesthesia. Where are your notes?
what time to get it out?
See, I just
Thank
said,
you.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
You can borrow it. All right, so anesthesia. Well, first we need to define it. The definition of anesthesia is pharmacological depression of the nervous system. Pharmacological depression of the nervous system. Now, notice I said nervous system. I didn't say central, I didn't say peripheral. Pharmacological depression of the nervous system. Well, we have two extremes and everything in between. If we pharmacologically depress the central nervous system, it's probably, may not be, but it's probably general anesthesia, as in inhale, count backwards, start at 10 and start counting backwards, whatever, and you wake up 4 hours later and everything's, it's done. Okay, think about upstream, downstream. Think about flow of information. So if you pharmacologically depress the brain, everything downstream is depressed, anesthetized. At the other extreme, this would be peripheral, local anesthesia. So you were chopping wood and you cut your leg with the axe. You don't like that example? Well, so here's a real life example from like the 7th grade. We're at the skating rink and my friend Kerry fell and somebody skated over his finger and it like popped. So he had a little cut in his finger about a half an inch long. Okay, he had to go get a couple of stitches. In my wood chopping example, same thing, except it's more of it didn't happen, so that makes it different. But in my wood chopping example, it's more of a gash in the leg, 4 or 5 inches long, a lot deeper. But who's had stitches? Where do they administer the anesthesia?
In your skin.
Right around and in the laceration. Yeah. So if I've cut my finger and you anesthetize that cut so you can sew it up, what would happen if you just for the heck of it decided to take a scalpel and cut my hand?
You'll feel it.
I'll feel it. Yeah, I'll feel it. Okay.
A lawsuit.
A lawsuit. Okay, so we've got our extremes, okay? Now, with the central aspect, we could anesthetize something like the cord, because the central nervous system is not just the brain, it's the brain and the cord. So we could talk about spinal anesthesia. Okay, that's still central, but it's not general. With spinal anesthesia, you go in around T10 into the subarachnoid space, and everything from the waist down is numb. Numb, 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 numb. As in, you could cut the person's legs off, they wouldn't feel a thing. We could put an epidural in this category of the cord and central. Central just because it's the cord. Now, what's epi mean? Above. So do you pierce the dura with an epidural? No, you don't. Do you pierce the dura with spinal anesthesia? Yes, you do. So with spinal anesthesia, you could, as I've already said, cut somebody's feet off. They would not feel it. Now, I've never had an epidural. Some of you may. I'm not asking for a show of hands or anything, but just think amongst yourselves and maybe think about the experiences with friends and family members that people have shared with you. But with an epidural, you'll hear people say, man, I was numb. You could have cut my feet off. You'll hear people say, no, I could feel. It was just more like a pressure, not a pain. You'll hear people say, I was kind of numb, but not completely. I mean, it helped a lot. But if you would have cut my feet off, I would have felt every. Okay, you get what I'm saying? There's a lot of variation. It's not as numbing as true spinal anesthesia. All right. Beyond that point, we would be peripheral, and we would have. Of course, we have our extreme local. But we have regional anesthesia. These are nerve blocks. Now, if we once again go back to that introductory material, we've got the term plexus. Coming off of the spinal cord, we have an axillary a cervical plexus, a brachial plexus, a lumbar plexus, and a sacral plexus. So if you blocked the brachial plexus, what would be numb? The legs? The arms. If you blocked the lumbar plexus, would it be the anterior or posterior leg that was numb? The anterior, and sacral is posterior. Now, I told this story in some other context last semester, so some of you have heard it, so I apologize you're hearing it again. But true story, I had to have the head of my fibula reattached to my tibia. I ripped the head of my fibula off just above the A-frame running down the bar trail, and I literally used duct tape to stabilize my legs so I could finish the race. I didn't want to be one of those people that comes down on my girl. No, I'm deadly serious, yeah. And so what the surgeon did is he drilled a hole in the head of the fibula and took a piece of tendon from a hamstring and ran the tendon through the hole in the head of the fibula, through the tibia, tied it off. There's a little screw in there holding it all together, and it's perfect. I can't tell anything was ever done. The leg is just as strong as the other leg. I would say it's actually better than what God or Darwin gave me. But anyway, the point is, where are we going to draw the line between anterior and posterior? Here's the head of the fibula. So which plexus do you think was blocked?
Both.
Both. Absolutely. Both were blocked. And of course I had general anesthesia too. But, all right, so we've got general down to local and all these things in the middle. And why are we talking about this? Well, because it comes up in the context of the meninges. It's also interesting to talk about. If you didn't think so, well then delete the conversation from your brain. All right, guys, where are we in time? Class is over. Oh. Oh, no wonder I'm losing it up here. Where are my notes? 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we'll pick up with the cranial nerve page on, thank you, Wednesday. I'll see you upstairs. Half of you anyway, in a minute.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So every time I have an anesthesia done for pregnancy,
Every time you